you know that family therapy is an age-old profession, as old as the very first family unit? By the way, Adam and Eve were fortunate to have God for a therapist. We read in chapter 3 that God came down walking and called, "Adam, where are you?" They had God who laid the principles of healthy and thriving relationships and what is good and what is not good. Later, we read about their sons, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel and walks away. And God calls on him and says, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me," and tells him what will be the consequences of his behavior. That is family therapy. God is still in the business of healing families and mending the brokenness and from the emotional and mental illness. Hello viewers, welcome to this episode of Ebenezer. Thank you for joining us each week right here on Preach the Word Network. It's a much cooler day today, but there are rays of the sun that confirms that we are in the changing of the season. We are approaching winter, but grateful for the warmth that we feel inside. The warmth that even those rays of the sun bring, but just the warmth of the love of God that warms us from the inside out. Today we have an opportunity to meet yet another guest, get to know something about their life story as we look at this topic of mental illness and faith and how the two can intersect. The guest today is a mother and son duo who will share with us from a lived experience, living with a diagnosis of mental illness and finding one's way to recovery, where faith becomes a pillar in the recovery process. Before they come, we ask the question, in the last decade, there has been more awareness of the effects of mental illness with families. And for many families, the family unit tends to be the most important relationship in their lives. Families are important systems that can provide safety nets as members grow and provide a conducive environment for warmth, for growth, for comfort, and other necessary supports as needed. A family system helps to shape the worldview of individuals and can provide a helpful support in their times of need. People from different cultures, civilizations, and societies have practiced family therapy over the years, either within the extended family, within their social structures, within their faith traditions, and in some cases, there is a need to see a specialist to access the supports and the help that is given by trained professionals. So the field of family therapy has evolved and developed into a full, crucial profession over the years. Talking of how mental illness plays a factor, especially for the people of faith, and how professionals in family therapy, in spiritual care, and psychotherapy find ways to address those challenges when individuals come for therapy. In a chapter of a book published by Canadian Multi-Faith Federation, I contributed a chapter titled Addressing Spiritual Struggles in Mental Health. I observed that the last 2 decades witnessed an increase in interest among researchers looking into the merit of addressing spirituality in therapy. The consensus among practitioners is that spirituality is a vital dimension in the lives of many clients and therefore should be addressed. However, beyond addressing the big question is how. How exactly do we integrate spirituality in therapy? How do we address spiritual struggles with individuals living with the diagnosis of severe mental illness and be part and parcel of their process to recovery by bringing those modalities that address help in effective therapy, but also addressing their faith and their spiritual practices. So addressing spiritual struggles in therapy continues to be a challenge for many. Today we'll get a chance to hear the story from one who has found themselves in the journey to recovery, looking back into their experience of struggle with mental illness and finding their way to incorporate faith, or how faith can address specific situations for them. The difficult part sometimes is for parents or loved ones of the individual living with the illness. It can feel like the entire family system is experiencing the symptoms and living under the weight of the illness. What does a Christian parent desire the most for their children? We read in Proverbs 22:6, start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn away from it. There are many trained professionals that complement the efforts of parents, especially in times of crisis. But we do not want to wait until we reach that critical moment. It is helpful to instill an ongoing practice of seeking support when needed. In some churches, faith traditions, they incorporate the role of a therapist. There is a therapist on staff who addresses those issues that need to be addressed beyond the regular counseling, pastoral counseling needs. We want to hear the voices of our guests as they share with us their story, journey through mental illness, and a recovery process that incorporated accessing one's faith as an added support in the recovery process. I will see you on the other side of the conversation. Ebenezer. Welcome back, viewers. Like I mentioned, we are honored to have a family with us today, mother-son duo, to share their testimony, to share their story. Before they do that, we just want to know who they are, something about them. And today we'll say we have met this mother and son. We have met them. We now know something small about them. We can never know everything. But whatever we will learn about them, it's an opportunity to witness their Ebenezer moment and join them in giving God the glory. Welcome, Dominique. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today. And the right place to start is to tell us something. Tell us your names and tell us something unique. It can be a social location, your hobbies, your interests, something to help us know you better.
So my name is David, and right now I just turned 19. God has brought me through a lot during my journey, as I'm going to share, and my passion is toward helping those that are mentally ill, preaching the gospel, and just having that relationship with Him and devoting my life to Him.
Thank you. And Dominique?
My name is Dominique Jackson. I'm a school teacher. I've been teaching close to, I think, about 29 years now. I don't do a lot of things. I obviously I go to work, I go to church, I participate in small groups, Bible studies. I enjoy reading. I enjoy watching TV, like 700 Club, Joyce Myers, a lot of TV evangelists and those kind of things. And I enjoy spending time with my son, and that's about it.
That's wonderful. That's full and rich and great to know. Now we want to start with you, Dominique, a mother, a teacher, multiple roles, and most importantly, as a parent. Usually, I had mentioned earlier, any parent at any time, at any stage in life, our desire, our biggest prayer is that we'll raise our children in the ways of the Lord. And sometimes we even try to protect them from ills of life. And there is just so much we can do. So I want to start just to get to know a little bit about your early years, about your faith journey. And then we'll get to know something more about your wonderful son, David.
Oh, okay. So growing up, our household, my mom was Catholic, so I did go through little Catholicism classes. We did go to Catholic church when I was very little, but it wasn't like all the time. So I didn't really have a relationship with God. It was more like I knew he existed, and I did believe he existed, but that's it. Sort of like this God that's far away, and he did what he did. He created the earth, and that's it. That was the extent of it. I had a wonderful childhood in the sense that I was the only child, and I was the only granddaughter, the only niece. I was very spoilt, but with love, like not just material things. And at 27 is when I got saved. An incident happened, and someone I met invited me to a church. And when I went to the church, it's actually his grandfather's church. Oh. It's as though when he was speaking, I was like, how does he know all these things about me? Like the sermon was particularly about me and what I was going through. Mm-hmm. And that just drew me in. And when she asked me, did I want to come back the following week? I went, yes, and yes. And then finally he did an altar call, and the Holy Spirit convicted me to get saved. And from there, I enjoyed going to church. I enjoyed the people at church, but for a long time, my relationship with God, I was a baby. So it was more like what he could do for me. I was seeking out his hand and not his face. Mm-hmm. And so, but he was so faithful. He met me where I was at all the time. And whenever I was in a crisis, like when his father and I got a divorce, I was distraught. God always was present. I could feel his presence. He was always there. No matter what happened, he was always faithful, and always showing himself as sovereign and more powerful than the problem itself. And so I grew closer to him. And, some people run away from God and say he doesn't exist, but for me, he just showed up all the time. So I was like, it just built my faith up. So it was really good. So when my son got ill, I knew I could trust God. I knew it with all my heart. Yes.
That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. You say it was more about you are growing in your faith. You're growing and building your faith and wanting to seek more of God, know more of God.
Yes.
And trying times did the opposite, brought you closer to God.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Many times there are people who trying times cause them to, it stretches them too much, and they wonder, where is God? And so it almost causes them to pull away.
Right.
But by God's grace, trying times pulled you closer to God.
Yes.
And that happened before your son became ill. And that means your feet were grounded. So
Correct.
that by the time that illness came, you knew where to turn.
Yes.
Now, David, tell us something about yourself. At what stage did you embrace faith? Growing up with a mother who is following after God's will, moving closer to God, sheltering you with her prayers, and at some point it has to be you desiring that faith for yourself. Tell us something about your own journey.
So in my early ages, being a kid, I was raised in a Christian home, obviously, because of my mother, she was a Christian. My grandfather was a pastor, the one who had the church where she got saved at. And people were always planting seeds in my life. My grandfather was planting seeds in my life. You know, I knew certain scriptures as a kid. I loved the Lord. I was devoted, but I didn't understand what it was like to have a relationship with God, even though I was devoted. I was very ritualistic and religious when it came to my relationship with Christ. And it was more about what he could do for me also. And I felt like he was far away from me. But because I was so young and I was so devoted, you know, especially in my 8th grade, I would get teased and made fun of at school. And even in my childhood, I'd get teased usually. I did not feel accepted. I felt very rejected. And I became in my 8th grade very desperate for that attention, for that acceptance. And I said to myself, you know what, like, I'm sick of being persecuted for being a Christian. I'm sick of being teased because I was so sensitive as a young child. I couldn't handle that. So I said in grade 9, when I go to high school, I'm going to hide my faith. You know, I made a decision to go to the world, to be a part of the world, to be that cool kid, to be that popular kid, and to chase that popularity and acceptance instead of Christ. And that's what I did. During my childhood, I always did during my childhood have OCD. I suffered also with ADHD and learning difficulty. But I had such a good grade 9 year that I became obsessed with it. And I said to myself, okay, you know what? I want my next grade 10 year. I want it to be the same. I want it to be exactly the same. So I would actually start, like, during that summer of going into grade 10, I started like praying to God. You know, I want to feel the same. I don't want things to change. I want the next year to be the same. But then you know, I saw he wasn't answering. So what I did was, and I don't want to get too deep into it yet, but what I did was, because I saw he wasn't answering, I started praying to the devil. And yeah, that's what led to oppression.
Thank you. I wouldn't ever say that I understand your experience. I understand what you've been through, but I can almost sense that as a mother, as a grandmother, and as an individual who works with individuals who have been diagnosed by different kinds of emotional and mental disorders, and sometimes just to see how faith can pull them back. But being a young boy, seeking and looking and desiring just for the basic need of just being accepted, just belonging somewhere, life can be brutal. So thank you for honoring us with your story. Now, as we come towards the conclusion of this first episode, and I want our viewers to know, we are privileged and fortunate that you're coming back for 2 episodes. As we tie up this episode, I'd like to ask, is there a moment that you consider an Ebenezer moment? It can be individually for each of you or as a family. In your journey of faith, in your family journey, there are normally multiple Ebenezer moments in life, a moment that only God carried you through. Without God, it had a potential to overwhelm or even swallow you. If you look back, what would you consider? Can you share with us a moment that was an Ebenezer moment in your life, individually or as a family?
For me, the 2 hardest things that ever happened to me was the divorce, and when my son, it's not that he, obviously when he got sick, and he couldn't function anymore, like literally couldn't function. The OCD was so bad. His life was just full of rituals. Like when you have OCD, you have all these compulsions, and the compulsion, but it was, I didn't, the demonic oppression. And then he despised me because I represented Christ. I was praying in the house. He hated that. I would read the Bible. He hated that. So then he hated me. And that was so difficult for me as a mother who had made him my life. I don't date. It was like, how could this be? And, but God was so faithful for those 4 years. He sent me people that prayed with me, people that were there for me. One in particular who helped David and I all the time, who opened her doors to David because he was not happy in this home. So he'd sleep over at her house, the family's house, her and her husband and the children. And it was just like, I could see everything God was doing just to keep me afloat, for not becoming like having total despair, and it's just amazing. But you have to be open to it. What I mean, often people will pray, and when they don't see the results, the full results, they get dismayed, and they can't get dismayed. God encourages us in little things. You have to be willing and able to see the little miracles that he's doing in your life to keep you going. He does this so you don't drown in despair. And I can't, there's so many things he did. I can't even pinpoint everything that he did for me, but like, he would give me scriptures and I would hold fast on those scriptures to keep going. Books, I would come across books that would speak volumes to me, Christian books, with authors, giving me hope. And so I just knew I would watch television. And there would be a pastor saying something, and I'm like, that's you, God. You're speaking to me through this pastor. I just prayed about this. I would have a prayer, and someone would say something that would speak exactly to what I had asked for. I prayed for some wisdom I had asked for. It was amazing. Yes.
Thank you, Dominique. And I know our time is up, so I want to come back and ask an Ebenezer moment of David. We'll hear more of what that journey towards recovery has looked like. Today, I'm grateful that you came. Initially, I was saying the sun is piercing through and messing up our lighting, but I think that was affirmation. It was almost confirming how in a season of cloud and what can look like darkness, there can just be one ray of sunshine.
Yes.
That creates a little bit of hope. So thank you for coming and sharing this story. And I want our viewers to know that David and Dominique are back with us next week to continue this story. Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you.
Bye. Thank you. God bless.
Welcome back, and thank you for sticking around. Thank you for joining us today on Ebenezer. We had the privilege of meeting my new friends, Dominique and her son David, learning something about them, listening to their story, witnessing their Ebenezer moment, as Dominique outlined some of the supports and resources that she found helpful in their journeying alongside her son through his recovery. We get to know, at least now we can say we've met someone new, we've gotten to know them, but that was not it. Today was just the introduction. We look forward to continuing the story next week when David tells us more about his journey with mental illness and the path to recovery that's ongoing. We reflected on the role of family in the growth and development of individuals. The family is almost the primary stronghold of an individual's life. It's a place where an individual can fall back to and find a safety net as they go through the storms of life, as they navigate the challenges that life can throw at them. The profession of family therapy has evolved, and the hope is that there are trained professionals out there easily accessible by individuals and families at their time of need. The challenge that many professionals encounter is finding effective approaches in addressing spiritual struggles in mental health. In a chapter, I make an observation that there are a wide variety of perspectives, worldviews, and approaches and practices in our increasingly diverse context. However, a clearer understanding is likely to lead to effective integration of therapeutic models in spiritual disciplines like prayers, meditation, reading of scriptures, and communal worship. This strategy has proven helpful for clients in their attempts to adhere to treatment, but also manage their symptoms. Sometimes there can be almost struggles when they are experiencing symptoms and trying sometimes to describe them or understand them through their spiritual language, through their faith beliefs and practices. And therefore, in that chapter, I look at cumulative case studies, 3 different studies drawn from a spectrum of a wide variety of faith traditions, but with shared beliefs and practices through distinct spiritual disciplines. I'm encouraged by Dominique's story when she talks about having resources and supports that helped her along the way. But more importantly, it was her faith in God, her knowledge of God that grounded her when this illness felt like a storm that was attacking the family. Psalm 139, 7-12. The psalmist poses a question: where can I go from you, from your spirit? And the answer is nowhere. Not in heavens, not in hell, not up in the sky, not deep down in the sea. There is nowhere that we can go that's out of God's reach. And I'm grateful to God that despite the challenge that David went through, there was an assurance in that family that they were within God's reach and they could access God's help. We'll continue this conversation next week. For today, on behalf of Preach the Word Network and on behalf of the Ebenezer team, thank you for joining us today and sharing your time with us. We look forward to more time and to hear more of Dominique and David's story. In the meantime, take some time and share your own stories. We are approaching Christmas season. When you gather with your family, celebrate your family of origin and the strength and resilience of your family. Have a gentle week.